Welcome to Radio Free South Africa. This is your host, Karin Smith. In honor of this most holy of weekends, I would like to wish you and yours, from me and mine, a peaceful and prayerful Easter. I'm very privileged to have as my guest tonight, Kyle Hunt. Many of you will know him from Renegade Broadcasting, but for those of you who don't, Kyle Hunt received his Bachelor of Arts in Psychology and Theatre, worked briefly in Silicon Valley, and then became involved in the alternative media in 2008. Over the years, he has covered topics such as symbolism, mythology, occultism, spirituality, paganism, racial realities, revisionist history, politics, and anything else that might pique his interest. Kyle is best known for hosting a popular online radio show, founding Renegade Broadcasting, and leading the controversial 2014 White Man March in an effort to raise awareness concerning the ongoing genocide of European people across the world. In short, Kyle is a man on a mission. But Kyle is also very well known for his recent production of the very well-received documentary, Hellstorm. Welcome, Kyle.
Thank you very much for having me here, Karin. It is an honor and a privilege to speak with you.
I would also like to mention that Kyle is a very staunch supporter of the white South African cause. He has had many of us on his show, and any time that I need help, no matter how busy he might be, how far away from home he might be, he is always there within minutes with an answer, a helping hand, or a shoulder for me to cry on. So, Kyle, obviously you have been speaking out about the white genocide worldwide, but what particularly got you involved in the South African white genocide? Because, as you and I both know, there's been such a media blackout on it that people don't even know about it. So how did you get involved?
It's really hard to pinpoint exactly when I started to learn about it, but once you start looking into white genocide, you will quickly find videos and podcasts about South Africa. So it was probably sometime back in early 2012 that I first really became aware of the dire situation going on in South Africa. And I realized that what we're seeing there is pretty much the extreme version of what we're going to be seeing all over, what we are seeing all over. What has happened in South Africa is the plan for the rest of the world. And so that's why I think it is so important to bring attention to South Africa, to wake people up, and to get us whites around the world, people of European descent, to realize that our kinsfolk down in South Africa are in dire need. As bad of a situation as it might be for some of us in the United States or in Europe, what they're facing in those, I mean, they're called squatter camps, but that is a little bit misleading. Pretty much genocide camps. What the whites are facing in those camps is so deplorable. It's so heart-wrenching that I really do think that if people were to see it as I saw it in 2012, as many others have seen it since, if they were to see it, they would awaken, at least partially, to the truth about what is taking place to us around the world, about these policies that have been implemented to disenfranchise us, to take away our livelihood, to make it so we aren't able to have large families and feel safe because our jobs are given over to less skilled workers in the form of affirmative action. So it really was just seeing the terrible situation that whites were facing down there that got me to start speaking about this issue, started to get me to produce some content related to this. And I wish I could do more. I wish I knew more. I don't pretend to even know a fraction of the history, of the nuances of South Africa, but I know enough to know that what is taking place there is so utterly wrong, inhumane, and disgusting that it needs to be brought to light. And I'm so happy to see that there is a documentary that you are going to be narrating that is getting produced, that just really began production. And I'm happy to help in any way that I can. I've offered some assistance thus far in giving the outline that I was working on for such a project over to Sinead, and she's working on this, and it looks like it is going to be fantastic. It's just amazing to me that something of this scope has never been produced thus far. A documentary really about what it is like, what it was like, and what it is going to be like for whites in South Africa if nothing is done. I really think that this is going to be very, very important in waking the world up to the situation down there. And Karin, everything you've been doing has brought so much attention to this issue for people all around the world. And I know that a lot of people out there give you a heartfelt thanks for all of the tireless dedication you have to this cause. And it is appreciated, and it's not all for naught. You know, it might seem hopeless sometimes, but awareness is rising. Things are happening. The wheels are turning. And for everyone out there that is stuck in South Africa right now and doesn't want to leave, can't leave, whatever the case may be, that's listening to this, know that although it might seem like you're alone, you might feel alone, there are people out there that really do care for you. We see in you the same blood that runs through us. That's what's really so touching about it, Karin, is when you see the young children in these camps in just dirt poor conditions, just being oppressed by an anti-white government. You see in them what looks like it could be your own child.
Yes.
That's just
yeah, absolutely. Carl, you know, I'm almost crying because the one picture that we have there is that little blonde child. And they are just children. They did not commit any crime. They have done nothing wrong other than be born white. And as you yourself said, South Africa is the blueprint for the rest of the world. So what took 21, going on 22 years now, to happen in South Africa is happening faster and faster throughout Europe, because they took South Africa, they tried it out, they made it worse and worse by the year, and found out that nobody was going to pay attention. So they could do it quietly and with nobody saying a word, and they rolled it out for the rest of the world. And now it's going out so fast, it is frightening.
Mm-hmm. And we have no idea. For the most part, Americans and many people in Europe, they have no idea because there's a complete media blackout. We might learn a little bit about apartheid and Nelson Mandela in school, and it's always put in a very, very positive light that he's just this glowing, shining, smiling figure that he was imprisoned by racists. He couldn't have ever done anything wrong. We're not taught about any of the bombings, the terrorist campaigns that were launched by Nelson Mandela, why he was imprisoned. No, we're just taught that it was racism that caused this. And finally, the world browbeat the South Africans into stop being so racist. So they embraced the Rainbow Nation. And then we're just left to assume that after apartheid fell in 1994, that everything's been sunshine and rainbows since. And that's what these movies put out, like Invictus with Matt Damon and Morgan Freeman. Morgan Freeman playing the Nelson Mandela character. These are meant to indoctrinate people to think that everything's A-okay down there, that there's no problem between the blacks and the whites now. And if there is, it's probably the whites' fault, just because they can't get over their racist past. And you see people like, once you learn the truth, and when you see people like Winnie Mandela being welcomed into the White House, when you see every single world leader go down for Nelson Mandela's funeral and cry their tears, it just makes you absolutely enraged and sickened to see the sorry state of the world now when you see genocidal terrorists lauded as saintly heroes.
Well, you know, one of the things that I come up against every time I speak is the Nelson Mandela theory. You know, he was such a great man, such a peaceful man, he was not, Kyle. He was convicted of 176 counts of crimes against the state and trying to overthrow the government. And he pleaded guilty to 104 of them. He didn't even 154 of them. He didn't even contest them. So I don't understand how people can think he was such a great man. If you look at the list of the bombs that he was responsible for and how many innocent people they killed, you would be shocked. And people generally are, because he bombed restaurants, he bombed police stations, he bombed railway stations, you know, and killed dozens and dozens of people. And I don't understand how the world is so convinced that he was the saint, because he really wasn't. He may have been a little calmer when he came out of jail. He may have calmed down with age, but he still refused to renounce violence as a way of life.
Mm-hmm. It reminds me a bit of the communist terrorist Bill Ayers from the United States. He was the head of the Weather Underground. And at the last public above-ground meeting of the Weather Underground, they debated whether or not it was the duty of every good revolutionary to murder newborn white babies. This is kind of rhetoric that the New Black Panther Party has adopted.
Yes.
And this group, the Weather Underground, carried out bombings of federal buildings, multiple bombings across the country. And Bill Ayers, you'd think, should be rotting away in prison or have been executed by now. And other members of the group tried for inciting genocide against white people. And this was very much what it was all about, was taking down the white racist power structure. That was a justification for their terrorist activities. But no, Bill Ayers is not locked away in a federal prison. He is not dead. He went on to teach at Columbia University as a professor, and he was actually the person to help launch Barack Obama's political career, and has even taken credit for writing his book, Dreams of My Father. So this is the kind of person who is now educating young, up-and-coming, bright students at an Ivy League institution and grooming the presidents, or at least a president of the United States. It is incredible what we allow to take place, what just goes unchecked. People are willing to go and pay money to listen to Bill Ayers, this terrorist, speak about his former activities and make jokes about some of these things. And you have the same thing going on with Nelson Mandela, who was far worse in the amount of lives that he took. But it is an interesting parallel nonetheless, and it goes to show how it doesn't matter if you're a terrorist, if you're a communist now. That's actually fine. That's excusable. It's justified. But if you are a right-wing extremist with hate in your heart and have never harmed anybody, well, we've got to lock you up, and shut you down for that. It's just incredible how much we are being persecuted and victimized by these people who are claiming that they are the victims.
Yes. Yes. And you know, you were speaking about the Black Panthers. They took 2 trips to South Africa recently. And they went to, in their own words, to encourage the local population to get rid of the whites and to build their own nation of Azania, which is what they want to call South Africa eventually. And so some South African politicians in the white political party wrote to your Department of Justice here and said, excuse me, why are you allowing these people to come to our country and do this? And Eric Holders wrote back and said, well, they're protected under free speech. And so, of course, they're allowed to do that. Now, does anybody in this country really think that the South Africans need any help in the murder and slaughter of whites?
No, obviously not.
You know?
And this new Black Panther Party was excused by that very same Eric Holder, who's been replaced by another anti-white advocate, Loretta Lynch. But Eric Holder, the first thing he did upon coming into office in the Barack Obama regime was he excused the Black Panthers who had been committing voter intimidation, standing outside a voting place with nightsticks and yelling racial slurs at the whites, keeping them away from the polls. So this has been, is, and will continue to be an anti-white system that is hell-bent on our genocide unless something's done about it. And that's why it's so important that we make people aware of how some of these people in positions of power and great influence are not only just kind of turning a blind eye, they're encouraging it. They are funding it. You talk about how they want to rename South Africa. The same thing is happening here in the United States with the Reconquista, as they call it, of Atzland, where you have federal groups, presidents such as Obama, speaking at La Raza meetings. This means the race. This is the race in Spanish, and they call themselves basically the supreme cosmic race, and it is their destiny to reconquer vast territories of the United States. You'd think that something would be done about this insurrectionist movement, but no, the biggest corporations in the country, international corporations, fund them, sponsor them. And people bend over backwards to make sure that La Raza is not offended. It is incredible how we are just expected to give away everything that our ancestors fought, sweat, and bled and died for, just at a drop of a hat, just so we don't get called a mean name. We don't want to be called a bad name. That's the worst thing possible in our politically correct world, is to be called a racist or a bigot. So people go to great lengths to just show how much they are not racist. And I do think that this is starting to come to an end, and I'm glad to see it happen. But it is just amazing what they've been able to do with their indoctrination, their brainwashing, and their official policies, where you can't be employed if you hold controversial views. Your employers will be harassed. They'll ensure that you are basically destitute and that you are shunned from civilized society. So a lot of people just go along to get along, even if they don't agree with what is being done and said. And I think we need more people to stand up, people of influence, people in positions of power, and say, no, enough is enough. This policy of disenfranchising whites, putting forth race mixing propaganda at every single turn, and browbeating them into submission, making fun of them, encouraging racist jokes against whites. Like the Jamie Foxx appearance on Saturday Night Live a few years ago. This is one thing that really set me off. When he's promoting this movie Django Unchained, and he's just saying how great it is that in the movie he gets to go and kill all the white people. And people in the audience are laughing and clapping. I'm thinking, no, enough is enough. When I started seeing the world through these lenses and seeing such jokes like that as they are, I made it my mission to just put an end to it. This is not going to continue, and we need more people to devote their energy, their wealth, their lives to the well-being of their folk, to stop being so selfish and thinking, oh, well, this might put a hurting on my paycheck. This might be a little inconvenient for me in the short term. Well, if you don't start thinking about the long term, your children, your grandchildren, your great-grandchildren will have nowhere to call home. They will be persecuted, hunted down, if they are even lucky enough to exist at all. So we need to change things right now and ensure that our descendants have a nice place to call home.
Absolutely, Carl, because one of the things I say so often is that it is our duty as parents to leave a better world to our children and our grandchildren. And we have failed dismally in doing that.
Yes. And it was a slow progression of people just not standing up and saying something or doing something when they could have. And the thing is that it's just ramped up so quickly since people didn't put up roadblocks along the way, or the roadblocks that were put up weren't enough.
Yes.
People who are opposing segregation in the South or things like this, they tried for a time and then just were overwhelmed, and things moved on and time moved on. But now it's sped up to the point where the immigration flood, the mass invasion, is overwhelming. It's got to the point where the propaganda against us is just so awful and horrific. And it's gotten to the point where in the United States, white children are now a minority of school children, less than 50%. Now, back at the beginning of the 20th century, over half of the people born in the United States were actually blue-eyed. So that's a lot of a big percentage of blue eyes, which are recessive. Let's go, fast forward to 1960s. In the 1960s, almost 90% of the population was white. That's a lot compared to what it is now, where the official estimates put it somewhere in the 60%. But in all actuality, when you consider the illegal invaders and how they classify many Hispanics as being white, the numbers are much less than that. And so in a few short decades, we've gone from having a real majority of the population being dominant in the culture to being completely displaced and on our way out. And all of the media talking heads celebrate it. There are books written about how great it is, the post-racial, post-white America, and how everything will just be it's going to be the land of milk and honey when they could finally get rid of the last pesky whites and have their beautiful diversity. And obviously, this is not the case. There's people advocating down there in South Africa for to get rid of all of the whites. Just take a quick look at what happened to Rhodesia as it became Zimbabwe, and what Mugabe did persecuting the whites, and how that ended up for them.
Well, they are starving. They were media reports in December of them eating rats for Christmas, and they're in an even worse position right now. But nobody, because the world has turned their backs on Africa, literally, and particularly on the previously colonized parts of Africa, like Rhodesia, South Africa, Mozambique, Angola, all of those areas that have recently been chased the whites out. There is nothing for the people of the world to look at to see what is coming their way. You have Detroit here. Mm-hmm. That you can look at as an example. But people seem to think that that is the exception rather than the rule. But if you look at Zimbabwe and you look at South Africa and you look at Mozambique, all three of them, first world, beautiful, productive, clean, law-abiding, wonderful holiday spots for everybody all over the world, and you look at them today. That is what is coming. And you've seen it in Europe. It has happened so fast in Europe within, 6 months? I'm not sure.
But yeah, it's been in less than a year, millions upon millions upon millions having flooded in. And before that, it wasn't actually very good. It wasn't a good situation. France was still being overrun. It still had no-go zones. But now it's just been made that much worse by the mass influx of these, they call them refugees or economic migrants. They're invaders. They're invaders, and many of them have admitted this. The plans go back a long time about wanting to take over, dominate, conquer Europe. And this isn't the first time it was done. People need to realize that this has happened before in the past. Spain, it took almost 800 years for them to fully expel the Muslims from North Africa. Yes. And they were enslaving whites. We're given this history just to browbeat us, where whites have only ever done bad things, never done anything good, and the non-whites of the world have only ever been kind of either noble savages or been the bastions of high civilization, and were the victims of slavery. When it could be further from the truth when you have instances of the North Africans with the Barbary slave trade, where you have them kidnapping women, children, taking them into their harems, taking men from their ships, or raiding coastal towns. Over about 1.5 million white Europeans in a short period of time were enslaved by these Muslims from North Africa, and you see the same thing taking place with the Turks, with the Ottoman Empire over there, more towards the east. They were taking young babies, white babies, and turning them into their elite guard. It was 1,000 white babies a year, and these became their janissaries. But this doesn't get taught in our history class. There aren't movies made about this. And it wasn't just that. These people ruled with an iron fist. They dominated the people of Europe ruthlessly. And you could go and discuss more and more instances, or even just the white slaves in America, the Irish, yes, the Scottish, and we don't have our history taught to us. As I said, there aren't movies made about it, and we're only ever made to feel like we are the ultimate oppressors, when at the height of slavery in the United States, only 1.4% of all Americans owned slaves. That's such a tiny fraction. And yet we're supposed to be collectively punished from here on out, forever, paying reparations, giving away things via affirmative action, because our ancestors were these evil slavers, when it couldn't be further from the truth. Many of our ancestors were actually enslaved. And even if it was the case that every single white person in the United States had slaves at the time, should children, generations upon generations removed, be collectively punished for things that happened in the past? We have blacks in the United States committing massive crimes, and Mexicans as well, committing just the most horrific crimes, but we can't collectively punish them now. And we're definitely not going to be going back and looking at the crimes that have been committed against us in the past and punishing the children today for what their great grandfathers might have done to us. We think that's absurd, but we think it's okay when it's done to us for some reason.
Why then, Kyle, are we so indoctrinated into believing that we are the bad guys? Because they're teaching in schools and universities today that white guilt, white privilege, and people are lapping it up. What is wrong with us that we don't stand up and say this is absolute happy horse crap?
Well, it's because the lies of equality have been pounded into people's head for so long. Now, we're in a society that's willing to discriminate against breeds of dogs. We realize that they're all the same species, but that some of them have different tendencies. So pit bulls and certain bulldogs and certain other kinds of dogs won't be allowed into certain areas, certain neighborhoods, or apartment complexes, because people are afraid of them. They might have violent tendencies. But when you try to say the same thing about the subspecies, the different races of humanity, oh, you are the most evil, bigoted, ignorant racist, because race is only skin deep. It doesn't actually really exist. All of our great scientists recently have told us about this, going back to Franz Boas. And the only reason that there might be inequalities amongst the different peoples of this earth is because of white racism. Because these other people have been held down in economic oppression by whites who control everything. This is what we're being taught, of course. And so that's the only explanation that can be given, is privilege. Whites are privileged, and that's why they are excelling at incredible rates. So that's why they have achieved so much. It's because of their privilege and because they have these economic opportunities. And the only reason that blacks commit so much crime, it's not because of any kind of violent tendencies within their genetic makeup or anything like that. Has nothing to do with race. It's because they're poor. But of course, upon scrutiny, the facts just don't add up. You look at some of the poorest places in the United States, like West Virginia, which is primarily white and very, very, very poor. The crimes are not anything even close to a city like Chicago or Detroit or any other of the great cities, formerly great cities of the Western world that have been ethnically cleansed of whites. And so I think when it comes down to it, people don't want to realize that inequality is the way of nature. And so they're willing to accept ridiculous notions such as white privilege in order to go along with the lies, to be able to make it right in their head that, oh, it's not that blacks might not have as high of IQs. It's just that they're not given as many opportunities. So they go out of their way to make sure that blacks are given extra special career opportunities, given lots of welfare, given every single kind of promotion over white people, and thinking that finally someday, after billions upon hundreds of billions of dollars are spent, and after whites have given up all sorts of kinds of positions of power, that blacks will finally one day be able to pick themselves up by their bootstraps, and they will be on equal footing. And it's nonsense. You look at how the formerly enslaved Irish in America fared afterwards. They didn't go about talking about their oppression, talking about no Irish need apply signs. They didn't go and try to browbeat people into giving them money because of their ancestors who died over in Ireland in the so-called famine, which was actually a genocide caused by removing foodstuffs from that island. But in any event, the point is that many people in America have not had it so good, but we don't sit around for generations after generations and blame it on other people, blame other people for our failures. And so as long as the blacks in America and the blacks in South Africa continue to go along with this game, they're going to get nowhere fast. Yes, they might take our wealth for some time, and they might expel whites from their place, sometimes unintentionally, like the ethnic cleansing, which results from white flight because of the high crime in the black areas. They will soon realize that although it might be the getting will be good for the short term, in the long term, they're killing the goose that laid the golden egg.
Yes, and what have they ever created for themselves? I mean, when the white people landed in South Africa, there was only the Khoi, which are like a Bushman-like race of people. They're little small people, not the big black noble savage. But none of them had ever built a city. They didn't have the wheel. They didn't have a written language. They didn't have anything. So now they get rid of all of us whites. Where does the world go back to? The Dark Ages? Neolithic times? What becomes of the world?
Mm-hmm. It will be such a terrible place to live that I'll feel bad for anybody that is on this earth if the white people ever do go extinct, because it's just the reality is that our people have brought civilization to this planet. We've done great things the world over, and we aren't given credit for it. They take our inventions, they take our technology, they take the roads we built and use them against us. We are never given thanks for any of the good things we do. For all of our ancestors who fought and died to end the practice of slavery. No thanks for that. It's always give me more, get out and die. And that's what you see being taught in these universities down in South Africa. Karin, could you tell us about this person in South Africa who was saying that whites need to stop reproducing, fall on the sword, and kill themselves? And this guy, of course, wasn't willing to step up to the plate and kill himself.
He was asked straight out at that press conference when he said that whites must stop breeding and they must literally fall on their swords and commit suicide. It's the best thing they can do for themselves and for everybody else. And so one of the journalists asked a really good question. He said, "So are you going to be the first one to do it?" And he said, "No, I'm not ready to die yet." But
he should lead by example.
Everybody else must. And I see the same thing with your liberal college professors here in America. white people must just die. But not them. Not
Hmm.
them.
Well, and it's not just the Jewish intellectuals like Noel Ignatieff or the white anti-whites or the people who pretend to be white, Tim Wise, and the other so-called anti-racists who are just legitimately anti-white. It's the blacks who are in positions of power who have huge audiences like Oprah, who's been elevated to such a high level. She was saying on her show one time about how basically it's these old whites who are the racists, and they just need to die
Yes.
for the world to be better.
Because they've been marinated in
Yeah.
racism throughout their lives and they need to die. And once they're dead, everything will be okay. Because we've not said, but implied, we've indoctrinated the kids so that they will feel bad about being white, and then the racism problem will be gone. But the most racist people in the world are the black people.
Oh, but that's fine. It is fine for blacks to want to have their homelands where they can just be by themselves and expel any white or anybody that they don't like. This is perfectly a-okay. Mugabe gets the thumbs up from the West. But when Europeans try to say, "Hey, these are our ancestral homelands. Our people have been here for thousands upon thousands upon thousands of years, and hey, we kind of like our children being safe and being white." So can we stop all of this mass invasion? Oh no. Oh no. They'll have the hate police after them. Their social media posts are all monitored.
Yes.
But it has become such that it is worse. It is worse in the Western world to be labeled a racist than to be a literal rapist.
Yes, it is. Because now rape is, well, it's perfectly normal for people, men, to be attracted to little girls. Perfectly normal. And there's nothing wrong with rape. In fact, we must stop making it a crime. We must say it's perfectly all right now. The liberal viewpoint for me is just so obscene that I can't wrap my head around it.
Yeah.
In South Africa, I would by liberal be called for crump, which literally means cramped. I'm so incredibly not open to these things. But it is disgusting that they want to allow sex with animals, they want to allow pedophilia, they want to allow rape, they want child rape, they want to allow everything. And where is our world going?
It's called a cultural misunderstanding. When let's say a Somali man goes to
Yes.
Sweden and he rapes a young girl in one of these in one of the pools, let's say in Germany as well,
Yes.
where all these rapes are taking place, or when they're groping them, or when they're doing this or that. It's a cultural misunderstanding because that's completely legitimate in their culture, and they just didn't know any better. So we need to help teach them not to rape, or just to be better behaved. And of course it's all a joke. It's not a joke, and that's no laughing matter, but the overtures that they make about trying to create a peaceful society where these Muslims are and Africans are just integrated members of society, they don't actually mean that. They don't actually think that will take place. This is a genocidal plan, and most of the people involved know exactly what it is all about, especially at the higher levels. And they have no dreams about some kind of rainbow Europe or rainbow South Africa where everybody's living in harmony. No, that's not what they want, not what they want at all. And they're very explicit about it. And you could just see how this is unfolding with instances such as Rotherham in England, where it was the pressure that was put on police, and then the pressure that the police put on parents, that kept this under wraps for so long, where you had, it seems, many thousands, some of them not even reported, of young girls being sex slaves to these Muslim men, to these Pakistanis, and nothing was being done about it for fear of being called racist and for fear of having the British government come down and step in and reprimand the police, fire the police officers who reported these crimes. Or it's just amazing. They'd lock up the parents of these little girls who were complaining, not lock up the people who were raping them.
Absolutely. But in South Africa, Carl, it's exactly the same thing. If you dare to defend yourself against a home invasion or your child or your mother or your daughter being raped, you will be the one that is arrested, put in jail for murder or homicide or attempted murder, and those people will walk free. So, there is no justice. There is no nothing. We all bend over backwards to accommodate these people, literally, because our kids and mothers and grandmothers are being bent over backwards and being raped to death by them. And just nothing happens to them.
Well, I really think that this goes back to, in particular, the end of World War II. And that's why one of the main reasons I made this film Hellstorm is because I feel like this is such a crucial moment in history when you see the communists, the USSR, along with the British Empire and along with the communists who were already well embedded in the United States government. When they worked together, they destroyed the Axis powers, and they unleashed a wave of rapists, torturers, and murderers across Germany and across other parts of Europe. And since then, since that time, with the communist victory, we have seen we've seen utter atrocities taking place across our lands. We've seen the decolonization of Africa and of India and all these other places. So even the people who are on the winning side of this conflict, they lost. They lost their possessions. They lost their right to even exist in the world as a homogenous people. And actually, we had ships that were repurposed. The German cruise liners that used to be taking the workers of the Third Reich off on these cruises around up into Scandinavia and wherever, the things that were reserved really for just the luxurious elite for the rest of the world were given to the workers in the National Socialist Workers' Party. Not even just actually the party members, but all German citizens were given these incredible chances to go and do things like this. Well, one of these ships was actually repurposed by the British, renamed the Empire Windrush, and it was used to take white children from Britain and send them off to Australia and off to Canada. These were oftentimes orphans. They got rid of the British children, often by lying to them. Hundreds of thousands. And the Empire Windrush was one of the ships taking these children off. And what was it also doing? It was bringing in blacks and browns into the country. So it's amazing what has happened in such a short span of time since World War II. And again, it's just so much is based off of the events of World War II. Yes. Because if you stand up now and say, hey, I think we should have a homogenous country, I think white people should have rights, what are you immediately called? A Nazi. You're shouted down as being a Nazi. And the lies that have come out of that war are used as a justification for just so much. So people who want to watch that film, it's available for free, hellstormdocumentary.com. It's by now gotten over 1 million views in the many places it's been uploaded. It's been censored around the world, but the truth needs to get out about what happened to the German people. It is very, very similar to what happened to the Southern people after the Civil War. And it is, of course, what is taking place in South Africa right now as well. All across Europe, all throughout the United States, a massive amount of violence against white people in the United States, and a media blackout. Over 35,000 white women raped by blacks every single year in the United States. Not a word. Not a word.
Well,
Only shedding tears for the poor black innocent youth who didn't do anything except for punch a policeman in the face and try to take his gun like Michael Brown did.
yes.
No, no, we got to have a whole movement, Black Lives Matter, based around a criminal thug who had just done a strong arm robbery and assaulted a police officer. It's just it's awful. It is so sickening to see the crimes that are hidden by these people who hate us so much in positions of power, who want to see us gone and enslaved.
Carl, you were talking about rape in the United States. Well, in August last year, in the first 20 days of August, there were 45,000 reported rapes in South Africa. Now,
wait, what?
45,000 in 20 days.
Those aren't obviously all whites. Do you know how many of those were whites?
Probably about 10%. But what is astonishing about that number is those are reported rapes. Now, right. The health department says that probably only 50% of rapes are reported for various reasons, but mostly because people don't trust the police at all. And also because you get treated like a criminal when you go to court about it. So if you double that number, according to the health department in South Africa, we should double it. So that's 90,000 rapes in 20 days. How many of those were white on black? None. One.
Same thing here in the United States. It's never white on black. It's never white men raping black women. They have to go back to alleged rapes of slave masters with their black female slaves to even claim something close to that, because there's none of it taking place today. That's why they have to point to things that happened hundreds of years ago in many instances to prove just how awful whites are. No, let's look at the facts today. What's going on today? If black lives really matter, why is anybody standing up and saying anything about all the black women who are being raped in South Africa? Why aren't they talking about the black on black violence in Chicago or any of these cities, Detroit or St. Louis, all over? It's just the media narrative is only there to blame white people and to incite violence against them. It's never there to actually stick up for the rights of blacks. Honestly, the people who are in positions of power really don't care about blacks. They don't care. They're just using them as a tool to destroy us. And it's just so sickening to think how quickly South Africa went from a first world country where this kind of thing, I don't know if you have the statistics, but I imagine rape was not all that common. Probably amongst the black population, it was, still, it was fair. It was, more common than in other places, but it skyrocketed after the fall of apartheid to now South Africa being the rape capital of the world, and Sweden, of all places, coming in number 2. And again, it's no Swedish men who are doing the raping.
Yes, and yet the Swedes are told that there's no such thing as a natural Swede. So in other words, these blacks are natural to Sweden and the white Swedes are not. I was stunned when I read that recently, that according to their government, there's really no natural Swedish person. So now what? So
I saw Jesse Jackson over in Sweden a few years ago. There's a video of this where he's on some TV show and talking about how Sweden basically needs to be a diverse nation and be basically to give its reparations, because at one small point in its history, Sweden had something to do with some slave trading hundreds and hundreds of years ago. But as I pointed out before, are we not going to take reparations from all of the blacks, the Africans, the Arabs, the Chinese, the Japanese, all these other people who have taken slaves throughout the years? Their descendants aren't supposed to be responsible for their crimes. Why not? We are
Always
supposed to give over all of our fortunes, all of our lands, everything, supposed to give over our women, our children to these people so that we don't get called racist. I'm so sick of these words. I'm just, people, get over it. Don't be worried about being called a racist. It's better to be called a racist than to watch your family being raped and tortured in front of you. Get over it. These are just words. I thought sticks and stones break my bones, but words will never hurt me. Come on, folks. Toughen up.
Really, Kyle, that we are living through in South Africa and have for the last 20 years is here. I see the number of rapes rising, black on white. I see the number of murders. I see that they're already burning white girls with oil here. It's all here, as it has been in South Africa for 20 years and more. And people still don't want to look at South Africa and see that we need to help those people in order to help ourselves.
Yes. I think this is what happened at so many different levels, because the South African people have so much to give us in terms of knowledge, whether it's just farming or whether it's in terms of racial realities or in terms of governance, or medical knowledge. South Africa has been the such an incredible place of development for hundreds of years now, actually.
Yes.
Just there's so much that these people can offer to us in that regard. But we also need to realize that if the South African people are run out of their country, where else is there to go? There's nowhere else to go. That's what I'm trying to get. There's no more white flight.
No.
We just can't keep running from our problems, because where are you going to go? The only place that's even remotely left is Iceland, and even there they're getting their waves of refugees coming in. It is such a it's gotten to the point where we can no longer be on our heels. We can no longer just be running backwards. We've got to confront these problems head on, and South Africa is really the
front line.
It's the front line. It's the tip of the spear there.
If we, the rest of us in the world, do not help that remaining 3.5 million people, their blood is on our hands.
Yes, it really is.
And really, honestly, I can't think any other thing than that, because they are deserving of help more than these economic refugees who are refugeeing from nothing.
Everyone is deserving of help. It doesn't mean we need to go and help everyone around the world, although white people have been doing this for so long. But when it's your own people, when it's your own blood,
yes,
we can't just throw them under the bus and just say, too bad for them, they shouldn't be in Africa, or get out. That is not the answer. No. I can understand some people wanting to leave there. And you yourself have left. A number of people have left, and I think that is good. But we need to also fortify their position down there.
Yes.
And I don't think that it needs to necessarily be to go back to what it was like, let's say, in the 1970s or anything like that.
No, but they don't.
It just needs.
They don't want to go back to apartheid. They don't want to go back to that. They just want self-determination, as we have given every other black tribe in that country their own piece of land where they rule themselves. They're ruled by their kings. They live their way. That is all the white people of South Africa are asking for now and ever have asked for. We're coming up to a station check. We'll be back in a few minutes. It doesn't seem that we're going to get the ads tonight. So in order to give us a chance to go and get a drink of water, I would like to play for you a special Easter song. Many of you know Ken Giverden from the Daily Ken, but I don't think that many of us ever knew how beautifully this man could sing. So this is a song that he sang for Easter in 1985.
Go ahead, drive the nails in my hand, laugh at me where you stand. Go ahead and say it isn't me. The day will come when you will see, 'cause I'll rise again. There's no power on earth can tie me down. Yes, I'll rise again. Death can't keep me in the ground. Go ahead and mock my name. My love for you, it's still the same. Go ahead and bury me, but very soon I will be free, 'cause I'll rise again. There's no power on earth can tie me down. Yes, I'll rise again. Death can keep me in the ground. Go ahead and say I'm dead and gone, but you will see that you were wrong. Go ahead and try to hide the sun, but all will see that I'm the one when I come. I'll come again. There's no power on earth can keep me back. Yes, I'll come again. Come to take my people back. Then we who are alive and remain shall be caught up together with them in the clouds, to meet the Lord in the air, and so shall we ever be with the Lord.
And you're back with Radio Free South Africa. I'm your host, Karin Smith, and our guest today is Kyle Hunt of Renegade Broadcasting. Welcome back, Kyle.
Thank you. I think it is a good, it's an important topic, of course, that we're discussing here tonight at this time of year, which is really all about new life. And, you know, with the Christian tradition is the resurrection, the new spiritual rebirth. But with the old pagan holidays, with Ostara and, you know, just in general, you know, with the Easter bunny and the eggs and everything, it's about new life. You see the flowers coming up all around. And I think we need to adopt this kind of mindset for the struggle that we're engaged in. It needs to be about new life. It needs to be about helping out those young children, those innocent children in South Africa. It needs to be about reproducing, making some of our own. It needs to be about not just looking at the terrible situation we're in, but also planning to create a much, much brighter future. And it's a balancing act that we must really try to perform here. It's so tough. It's so tough, Karin, because it's so easy to get dragged down into negativity when that's all we're seeing in our present world. But there are signs of life. We can see flowers coming up. And I do think that because of the efforts of people such as yourself and the other good folks out there who are doing their part, that we will see a brighter future ahead for us. Our cause is noble and it is just. We will be judged as being moral for what we are doing now, because all we're doing is saying that we deserve the right to live, to flourish, just as every other people is given the right to. It is not wrong to love your people. It's not wrong to defend your people. In fact, this is the most just and righteous thing you could do, is to protect those that you love. And this is something that all of the other races of the world seem to understand. And that's what we're trying to instill in our own people as well.
Yes. And you know, Carl, how long and hard this uphill battle has been for me. And there are many times, for many reasons as well, that I've wanted to quit. I've often thought, well, nobody's listening, nobody cares, and so on. But you absolutely cannot do it. I cannot do it, because our people in South Africa are the blueprint for everywhere else. And I have to fight this fight, make the world wake up, make them see that these people, embattled as they are, have got a spirit of survival, of rebirth, of literally joy, even in these circumstances. You've spoken to Lee, you have spoken to many South Africans, and they are not prepared to lie down and quit. So then how can I?
Right.
Maybe, how can I?
And what will be the future for those children, those beautiful children we see down there in South Africa? You can see in their eyes that they still have their spirit there, but they know that they don't have a future if things continue the way that they're going. It's just so sad to see them living as children who don't know what the world is really like, who don't know why and they're in the position that they are. And it is up to us to make sure that they get a glimmer of hope, that they get to smile, that they get a chance to live life to its fullest. These children can have so much to offer to all of humanity, to our people in particular. But that's only if we give them the opportunity to do so. That's why I think it's so important that there's that farm project that is going on, the New Beginnings project.
Yes.
Because this is what is going to really start to help people. It's going to. I really think that something like this will provide a blueprint for other people in South Africa to do the same, to start getting people to feel that there is something to live for, that there is an opportunity that they can have if they work hard. And hopefully it won't just be a blueprint in South Africa. We can apply this model all over the world. We can apply it here in the United States. I think we really need to offer these children hope, because otherwise, what are they going to do? They're going to take drugs. They're going to live a life that is destructive. They're going to go out and find a thug rapper boyfriend if they're a girl, or they're going to maybe even commit suicide if they're a young teenage boy who just feels like there's no opportunity for him. So we need to provide them with a hope for the future, and it might not be much, but at least it will be something. Well,
Carl, it took a tragedy for this project to get started, because the way the light bulb went off was the night that those children had to be evacuated from Munseyville in the middle of the night through the bush to the main road where people could collect them, because the roads were all closed off by rioters and by the police. So they had to take these children with flashlights through waist-high bush, and they took them out and they took them to some people's homes for the evening. And during that evening, they were talking to the children and asking them what do they want to be when they grow up. And they realized that these children are just kids with hopes and dreams like everybody else. And we must not allow those dreams to be killed. So Quentin came up with the idea of the guys in the camp finding out what their skills were before they were retrenched and getting them to teach uh, the upcoming generation those skills. So welding, plumbing, carpentry, etc. And from that small thought, this has grown. And yes, we're going to combine the two projects. We're going to combine the farm project with the New Beginnings project. Should we be able to raise enough funds for it, we will do this. And yes, it will be a small beginning. It really will, because we can only help 20 families the first year. But it's a start. And you know, South African Family Relief Project started with only 2 people. It started with Lee and her husband, and they beat up old jalopy. And look how it's grown now. They help people all over South Africa. They help 400 and something camps. They help I don't know how many people in homes who have not yet gotten to camp stage. So they help them in their own homes while they still have a home. And it's become enormous. So a small spark can start a bushfire. And that is what we need to happen. So these people have my full support, and anything they need that I can help with, I'm right behind them. Because as I do understand that people need a hand out because they need to eat. They need a roof over their head. They need doctors. They need medication. They need help with their children. They need help with the kids' education. But they need a hand up more than anything. And this is a fantastic idea to do that.
Mm-hmm. I think it's great because it's not just welfare where it's, you know, we're going to give you something that you might use up in a day. You know, we'll give you some food, which you'll eat right there, and then we'll have to give you more. This is something that will start to get people on the road to being self-sufficient. You know, it's the old teach a man to fish instead of giving him fish for a day. This is, I really think, the way that we need to start viewing things. And our people are so altruistic, so caring, and so giving. And what we need to do is just redirect it away from all these bad, awful charities that they've been giving to, where, you know, usually it's not a good cause to begin with, but 90% of the money will go towards funding the very wealthy people who are in charge of it. I think we need to stop get them away from all the scams that are out there, all the TV infomercials, and get their charitable giving qualities to be redirected towards things that will help our folk. And I think once that starts to happen, we'll see so many people just saying, how can I help? Once they see the videos of these children in the camps, they'll say, how can I get over there and help them? You know, we have Doctors Without Borders. We have all these organizations that are trying to go and help all of the non-white populations of the world. Where are they to help out the poor white South African folks?
Because it's not politically correct to help white people. And so not only do they have that problem in South Africa, where you are not allowed to give to a white charity. In fact, you're not allowed to run a white charity. But you have it in the rest of the world as well, because that's one of the biggest things I get accused of every time I do a show. And not necessarily this one, but where people don't know me. One of the biggest things is, do I detect a hint of racism here? Do I detect you want to go back to the apartheid years? You know, it's not that, Kyle. It's what you said earlier. There's absolutely nothing wrong with defending your own race, with promoting the health and welfare of your own race. And then you can look outside of it and share the rest.
Yes. And honestly, when you get rid of this communist mentality, the communist governments, what you'll see is that everyone will be raised up in order to enforce their false equality and have a very few living like kings while everybody else is living in squalor. They basically have to take the best amongst us and squash us down to the lowest common denominator. That's how their equality works, is that everyone, besides the very few chosen ones, will be living in equal equally awful conditions. However, if we allow for the natural organic systems to arise, we allow for meritocracy, and we allow for people to be operating positions where they're best suited, where we take away things like affirmative action, then you will start to see that everybody is better off. And even in that apartheid system that so many people rail against, the blacks down in South Africa were so much better off. You look at what was taking place under Jim Crow laws here in the United States. The black family was still intact. There wasn't nearly the amount of criminality, the violent crimes, and the drug abuse amongst the blacks here. And now what has happened since they've become empowered? It's over 3/4 of them grow up without fathers. It's just a culture that celebrates the worst elements amongst it. And anybody that tries to actually pull themselves up is grabbed back on down by their fellow blacks and held onto from getting too far ahead of them. And if somebody does get ahead, they say that they're acting white, or that they're an Oreo, black on the inside, outside, and white on the inside. So we need to get rid of this mindset that doing well and being good for your family and good to your community is a bad thing. We need to start bringing back natural communities, freedom of association, and amazing things will happen in a very short period of time. They're implementing this system that is so unnatural, and it is ruining us. It is ruining everyone. And I think it's so telling, though, that the conception of whites as being these evil, racist oppressors, it's such a lie. If whites were just so evil and oppressive, why would everybody want to go live with them? Down in South Africa, why would all of these blacks flood into this apartheid country? They weren't there before, then they just flood in. Why would they do that if these evil white racists cracking the whip and just oppressing them left and right? Same thing with the United States, same thing with Europe going on now, the mass invasion. If we're such evil racists, why are they flooding in?
Kyle, the black population of South Africa in less than a century grew by 920%. And that was under the evil apartheid rule, okay? So if it were that bad, how did their life expectancy grow by 20 years? How did death in childbirth decrease by something like 75%? And how did the numbers grow so much? 920%. So we apartheid people were so wicked. We killed them by their millions. We oppressed them. We gave them homelands in the desert where they couldn't survive. They had to subsistence farm and starve. Excuse me? The facts that are put out by the government, the South African government, tell you that is an absolute lie. None of that could have happened if it was so bad. And why does Archbishop Desmond Tutu come out about a month ago and say that things were better under apartheid than under ANC rule?
Right. Well, the fact of the matter is that often to their detriment, whites aren't actually hateful, racist. Yes, they might be legitimately racist in that they realize that there are differences between the races and that they care for their own. But you just look at the difference between what happens when whites are in power and the kind of racism that they exhibit as compared to when blacks are in power. And their racism is also, it's a tribalism too. The blacks murdering other blacks en masse, committing incredible genocides. And it is just... This is what we have been thinking is just such a great victory here in the United States when Barack Obama was elected. Oh, it's just so amazing. We're going to have equal opportunity for everybody. It's going to be kind of like this rainbow nation. He was our own kind of Nelson Mandela here in the United States. We'll have this racial unity. We'll have harmony, and we'll get past these negative stereotypes of the past. And honestly, a lot of Americans thought that was all right. We thought, hey, that sounds like a pretty good idea because we don't want to hate each other. Naturally, we don't want to hate or oppress anybody. But what has happened since the communist agitator has been in power? Racial tensions have been at all-time high. Rioting all over the place. Black on white murders just increasing incredibly. The knockout game. You have all sorts of just awful things taking place. A DHS agent went by the irritated genie, Ayu Kamathi. He was a DHS agent, officer in charge of buying weapons and ammunition. He was calling for a race war, saying that blacks are going to have to get over their kind of Christian hearts and just be able to mass murder whites. And he was put on paid leave for about 6 months before he was fired. And that was only after pressure was exerted. This guy was saying this stuff for a long time. And people were filing complaints against him for just being a loose cannon, everybody being scared of him. But no, that was, that's kind of it's kind of par for the course. We're supposed to accept blacks agitating against us. We're supposed to accept calls for our genocide as just being normal, as just being natural now that we have our rainbow nation. I
don't know if you must have seen how the beginning of this year started in South Africa with all the anti-racist rants from the government because of one lady supposedly saying, in fact, a supposed lady, there's no actual proof that she exists, but this lady, Penny Sparrow, saying that the million blacks on the beach on New Year's Day behaved like monkeys. Well, they set off such a storm in South Africa that they've now come out with new laws that they are going to create a database of people who are racist. Well, I suppose that would include me and any of my friends in South Africa. And they're going to make it available to every embassy in the world so that those people can never leave the country because they are criminals. So they've made these new laws, and they're taking people off of Facebook, only white people, mind you, and putting criminal cases against them. But the blacks on, for instance, Facebook, the things that they say, Kyle, are unbelievable. But they're not taken off, and they're not taken to court, and nothing happens to them because it's a well-known fact that blacks cannot be racist.
Yeah.
So it's only us.
And they actually have an equation about how blacks can't be racist because racism is privilege plus power. And so they don't have the privilege and the power, even when they do have both. They're just not racist. It's amazing that we have a society that is racially discriminatory against whites at every single level. Affirmative action just being a glaring example of this. And yet we have white privilege. So I am discriminated against because of this color of my skin when I go to apply for a school or go to apply for a job. Yeah, that's my privilege. It's my privilege to be discriminated against, to be hated, to have calls for my genocide in the media, to have everything blamed on me. Having white skin these days is the original sin.
Yes. But you talk about affirmative action. You at least do not have 141 and counting race-based laws excluding whites from the job market. And in order to protect the majority from a 5% minority. How ridiculous is that? But it's normal and it's fine.
That's not equality. They try to make it out that people like you and I are against equality. We just want to maintain our position on top, our artificial superiority, and we hate equality. I'm actually fine for so-called equality when it means that everything considered, the best person gets the job. I think in a society like the United States at this point, Yeah, we should shut down the immigration and everything. But I think it would work out okay if people just weren't judged on the color of their skin. I think that freedom of association is important, and that if somebody wants to have an all-white business or an all-black business, they should be allowed to do that. But my point is just that equality in the sense of just trying to find the best person for the job is good. I think that that's fine if people want to do that. If they want to try to have a colorblind system, that's not what it is. That's not what it is at all. It is an anti-white system. It is for every other color than white. There is no white in the rainbow, and it's so frustrating trying to get through to people that they've been brainwashed by all these nice, warm, and fluffy ideas like equality, and they can't see that it is anything other than that. It is an absolute inequality, with whites being held responsible for everything bad, and blacks being held up, and other non-whites as just being the epitome of everything good.
But do you not think that this equality that we're being subjected to actually means bringing everybody down to the lowest common denominator?
Oh, of course.
It's not uplifting anybody. It's bringing everybody down. Because in South Africa, they found that not enough blacks were passing. So originally that was because they were held to a different standard. Well, now that 90% of every school and every university has to be black, they can't say that anymore. So what they did was they put the pass rate down to 30%. Well, 85% of them are still failing. So do you know what they're going to do this year? The pass rate is going to be 10%. 10%. You get that for just showing up.
Yeah. Well, they've done similar things where they are making Ebonics, part of a school curriculum, and allowing blacks who can't speak proper English in the United States to take their tests in Ebonics and things like that. And we're seeing the dumbing down of everyone in general. And I think it is part of this imposed equality where it's just basically masses of enslaved people who are too dumb to even stand up and kind of fight against their oppression. And it's very frustrating, especially being somebody who, thinks that it's great that we have people who are exceptional. And the exceptional people are the ones who are held down, who are held back, especially if they don't sell out to the system and sell out their own people. But as I was saying, with the kind of the meritocracy where the best person for the job gets it, that's obviously not the case. This equality is so damn frustrating because they're really just trying to fit square pegs in round holes in every single different aspect. Where you have, down there in South Africa, they can't even have an air force because they're trying to get these blacks to fly the planes. They don't know how. They can't figure it out.
Planes anymore. Kyle, did you see that one? They don't have the.
No.
So when they were asked why are South African fighter pilots being trained in Cuba and Russia, the Minister of Defense said that it's the fault of apartheid, because when the white pilots were retrenched to replace them with blacks, they took the planes home to put them in their private museums.
Oh, right. That must be it.
No, that's what she said. She said that, and it's you just cannot understand it. The guy put a plane in his briefcase and walked out on the day he was retrenched. What? Honestly.
They'll make up any excuse.
Yes.
To explain why their black society or a black city like Detroit cannot function. In Detroit, you had all of these people who couldn't pay their water bills, so their water got shut off. This was sometime last year. And the UN was started coming in and making this a human rights issue because of the racist policy of not providing these people with their human right of water. Karin, do you know what would happen to me if I didn't pay my water bill?
Oh, my Lord. It would be
the water would get shut off
instantly, and they would hound you for that money until the day you died, and then they would hound your kids.
Yeah, well, I don't think the UN would be called in, that's for sure.
No, but that's exactly. I don't know if you've seen pictures of the illegal electricity connections in South Africa.
I've seen. I saw Jan's video where he was walking through Muncieville, right?
Yes. Now it's absolutely ridiculous. They connect a wire to the house next door or to the electric wires going overhead, and then they take it and they tape it with duct tape to the tin roof of their shack. Okay, and then everything just runs off the roof. So the bare wires from their TV, etc., are taped to the roof, and they have the TV working until
that's so unsafe.
Until there's a thunderstorm. Now, this is another wonderful thing. The Minister of Science in South Africa said that we're going to have to form a committee to investigate lightning because it's an apartheid thing, because it's never struck one. Sorry, I can't help it. It's not funny. It is.
Yeah.
White people have never been struck by lightning, and black people are getting killed in their shacks by lightning. So we're going to have to form a committee to investigate it because it's racist.
Lightning is racist now. Yes. That's the only explanation.
Yes.
It's the thing is, we have had lightning rods for so long now, and actually far longer than people actually admit. There's actually a whole science about this, it seems, that goes back a long time, the way that Europeans used to protect their trees and their sacred buildings and everything, going back a long, long way. So we've known about lightning for a very long time. And even if we just go with the standard history, a few hundred years now, we've kind of gotten that under control. But they can't seem to figure it out, even with the information freely available. The traffic lights is just a small example in South Africa.
Yes.
This is something that, pretty much people with just a basic understanding of electricity, a basic electrician, they should be able to go out there, troubleshoot it, get things back up and running in no time.
I want to tell you another story. I'm sorry, I'm just making South Africa seem funny, but really, so the one guy, he bought a new TV and took it home to his shack. And he called the TV company and said, look here, this thing goes on and off and on and off and on and off, and there's something wrong with it. So they replaced it. Anyway, after 3 times of replacing it, they sent a technician out. The technicians do not like to go into the black areas at all in South Africa, but they were fed up now, and they sent a technician out. And the technician discovered that he had it connected to the red on the traffic light. So when the lights changed, his TV went off.
That is incredible. In some ways, it's interesting to see how they
inventive
how they use the white systems, and it's just I wonder where things will really head if nothing is done down there to rectify these problems, because it seems that the rolling blackouts are just getting worse, aren't they, Karin?
And winter's there, and Eskom, the Electricity Supply Commission, asked to have an increase of something like 25% on the electricity price because so many of them don't pay for electricity. Well, the government refused it and said they could only have a 17 or 19% increase. So they've already said that because of that, the rolling blackouts, the load shedding is going to be worse this winter than it was last winter. Now, and I know, Kyle, that if your area is out for a week, your battery for your electric gate goes flat. Your battery for your alarm system goes flat. Your batteries for your phone, for your everything go flat. And then they publish in the newspapers, this area will be without power for so many days. So they're giving a roadmap to the criminals to come and attack you in your home, because now your normal defenses are down. Your electric fencing is not working. Nothing is working. So they know where to go. And this is just, for me, it's beyond stupid. But you will see it. The stores in those areas are the ones that are targeted for mass action, for robberies, and for crowds of blacks to go in. and steal from the stores. So they close their doors as soon as the lights go out. But how can you run a business? How can you run anything, a home, a business, anything, under conditions like that?
Mm-hmm. It affects everything. It affects everyone, especially when you're dealing with power there. Just a small anecdote from when I was renting a house a couple of years ago. And I was trying to get the power turned on, and the person who had lived there previously had racked up a pretty big bill, and the power company takes a deposit based on twice what the monthly bill was for the previous tenant. And this guy's a very large family, was running 2 refrigerators, and I was just so upset, that they were expecting me to fork over $600 some just to pay them a deposit before I could even get my electricity turned on. And after talking to some of these support people, I realized that the reason that they had to do this, that they were charging this amount of money, taking 2 months deposit, was the illegal invaders here in the country would often rent a place, turn on the electricity, use it, or just go into even a house that wasn't theirs, get the electricity turned on, and game the system, never pay for it, and leave. So they were never able. The power company was never able to collect the money from these people, so they were having to implement this policy of just charging huge deposits to even get your electricity turned on. So just one example of how this problem of having all of these illegals in the United States has changed how we can even access energy. And it's just it's something that a lot of people take for granted, that we'll just always have power, that it does, we'll always have people there to fix the systems when they go down.
You won't. You get rid of the whites, and you won't. You won't. And Eskom is now paying off another 3,900. In fact, probably the very few handful of remaining whites that work for Eskom are now being retrenched to be replaced by black people now at the beginning of winter, when all the problems start. So, and there's a law in South Africa now that if you buy a house, Kyle, and the guy before you owed thousands in electricity and water bills, you cannot take transfer of that house until you pay that bill.
Wow.
Yeah. Now, you buy a house in South Africa, and they've just passed that law saying that any property, now not just farms, but any property, commercial, residential, whatever, the state or the local municipality, town council, can come and say, we need this for national interests. And within 48 hours, you have to be out of that property. So now you tell me why any international company would invest money knowing that that property that they've bought or built can be taken away tomorrow for no reason whatsoever. And on top of that, they have to give, not sell, give 52% of the shares in that company to their black staff.
Now, other races around the planet, even if they might not like whites so much, realize that white people are very good workers, that it wouldn't make any kind of sense to just fire all the white people in a company. Can't they see the disastrous results of these policies? Are they not putting 2 and 2 together? Where instead of just realizing what we're talking about here, realizing the disastrous consequences of getting rid of your whites from all these positions, where you can't even have an air force anymore, where everything turns from first world into third world, and it's worse off for everybody. Instead of addressing it by saying, hey, we're gonna start employing these whites again. We've got all these white people with all these skills. Let's put them to work. Everybody will be better off. Instead of doing that, it seems they're all just convinced that going the economic freedom fighter route, the EFF route, is the way to go.
Yes.
Just going more extreme in the black power type of rhetoric.
Absolutely, because that revs up the vote. And they're coming up to an election. So for the whites in South Africa, for the next year, things are going to get worse and worse and worse for them, because the election's coming up. So each political party is going to go out there and get way more violent towards the whites, because that is the only way they're uniting all these disparate tribes from killing each other as they would normally, is by their united hatred of whites. So you're going to have to keep that going. And you're going to have to promise these blacks more and more freebies. And how do you promise it to them? By saying that we're going to take it from the whites and give it to you. Because Malema said, I don't think it was Malema, I think it was his sidekick, Floyd Shivambu. He said, you cannot steal from white people because you are simply taking back what was yours to begin with. So it is not a crime to steal from whites. So
and furthering the lie that all the blacks that were there were indigenous to that land.
Yes. And you can watch them on any media, anywhere. You see the hatred from them saying, yes, but you stole our land. Now, we didn't, Kyle, but you can't convince somebody who doesn't want to listen, who doesn't want to hear. So this is what they've been told from birth, and that's the end of it, You just, I don't know. I don't know what to say, because it's going to get harder and harder. You can see that the murders in this year have ramped up something horrific. In 30 days, there were 32 farm murders, not attacks, murders. That's not allowing for the number of attacks and the number of survivors. That is just the murders. And that is not saying the civilian murders either. So you can see for yourself that it is becoming, that's escalating at a rate of knots, because Zuma is under threat from the EFF, because Malema has got incredible black youth support. And it's just going to, I don't know what's going to happen. I feel such a sense of urgency about the white people of South Africa. I don't know what more we can do, what more I as a person can do to help them.
Karin, are there any blacks in South Africa who are sympathetic to the whites? It seems that there are some. Can there be some kind of coalition formed, or at least some propaganda put out that could help to reach through to people around the world, saying, there is a big problem taking place here. There is a genocide going on. If we could see blacks in South Africa advocating for the whites, that could really start to change things, at least from a propaganda standpoint, from trying to get this message out to a larger audience and pull at people's heartstrings. Now, I don't think that we always need to just try to make sure that we have black allies here and there. We don't always need that, but it can be very powerful when we do.
The problem is, Kyle, that as scary as it is for a white person to speak out, and it is very hard to get South Africans to come on a show because they are scared, and they are rightly scared because of what happened to Sunette Bridges. But the blacks are in an even more dangerous position. There are a number of them that I know on social media who are very sympathetic, who are very aware of what is going on, and who are fed up with it. But you cannot, I wouldn't even, I've asked, but when they say no because they're in danger, I just back off, because I understand it. In South Africa, you are called a coconut, or at worst an impimpi, which is a betrayer of your people, and you will be necklaced. Now, I never want to be responsible for causing the necklacing of some decent human being. So what do? They are scared, and they are rightly scared of their own people.
Yeah, it's definitely not that bad here in the United States, where blacks will just get made fun of for the most part, for sticking up for whites, or they definitely won't get necklaced. But
Yes.
when they're treating their own that way, I can see how no one would want to stand against them. It's just, it's it is the real racism that exists in this world is well, black racism is just incredible when you actually look at the results of it. Look what they did to each other. If they didn't go along with the program, if they didn't get go along with the Communist Party, it's just
some of the first atrocities ever in South Africa were the two political parties. It was the ANC and Inkatha. Now, the Inkatha are the Zulu people, and ANC was the Communist Party. During the freedom struggles, as they're called, those two parties really did the most atrocious things to each other. And that is the biggest number of deaths recorded during the apartheid era, is those parties fighting each other. And so it has never stopped. It has never stopped. So I understand the absolute fear of a black person to stand up and speak out. I don't know that I would have the courage.
What's the solution there? Is it just separation? Just break up South Africa so it's no longer just one kind of unified entity? It seems that there were a lot of people advocating for something really similar to this when right before the 1994 elections. A lot of people were saying, "Hey, just let us all have our own places, and we'll be able to get along just fine." I think honestly, just trying to unify all these different kinds of people into one big country it's going to result in clashes. It's going to result in lots of violence and power struggles. Diversity really is not our strength. Diversity is dangerous, very, very dangerous and volatile.
And forced integration is ridiculous. Now, the British were responsible for forcing all the homelands into the one union of South Africa. And I wonder whether the end game of that was exactly what is happening now, because each black tribe had their own homeland. So the Zulus had Zululand, the Vendas had Vendaland, the Swazis had Swaziland, the Tswanas had Bechuanaland, etc. So they all lived in their own homelands, and the whites had their own area as well. And then the British decided that they were going to form the Union of South Africa and push this whole lot into one conglomerate ruled over by the National Party. In 1948, when the National Party won their first election, still under British rule, and got to be the political party ruling that country, they did that and formed the Union of South Africa, integrating everybody. And so what did they expect to happen? This was an incredible boiling pot of disparate races who hated each other, who had killed each other throughout history. And they were all being forced into one area and forced to integrate, and it couldn't possibly work.
Yeah, it never works. Even when we have our diverse cities here in the United States, if things actually form more naturally, once you get all these different peoples into these places, then you have a Chinatown, then you have an Irish section. Yes. And sometimes there's a little bit of a mixing that goes on, like Queens in New York. I spent a little time there. You have Irish, you had Central Americans, and then you had some blacks as well. I think that was the makeup of that there. But in general, you will see people naturally want to be around each other. This is what our enemies are fighting against. This is what this whole diversity program, the communist agenda, or cultural Marxism is trying to destroy, so that we're all just one people and one humanity. And they want to erase all these differences. And I think
you can't, Kyle. As you say, we naturally segregate.
And I think
our own devices.
I think. Although they might target other groups next, a lot of this is just talk, that they want this, one world, and they want everybody to be together. I think a lot of this is just designed to destroy whites. They don't actually want any of that. They're just only really doing this in white countries at this point. So this is a targeted agenda just to destroy white people and make sure that we're no longer in existence in any way that could threaten the world order.
But yes,
that's the goal.
Our creativity and our stubbornness and our personalities are the things standing in their way. We are not going to lie down and roll over. But so they have to get rid of us. I mean, they've tried the indoctrinate us. They've tried brainwashing us. They've tried all kinds of things that didn't work because we are stubborn people. And we are individual people, and we think outside the box, and we will not get in that box with everybody else just because that's who we are. And so they now have to annihilate the whole lot of us.
Yeah, that's it. And we also are very moral for the most part. Yes. Our people do not like to see injustice. We really don't. And it has been used against us, our altruism, to get us to go help everybody but ourselves. But I think this is one thing that needs to be destroyed, that might not be as apparent in some of the other people of this world. Because if they really just want to rule over a whole worldwide slave state, then they can't have people standing up against it. Just how white people ended slavery hundreds of years ago, we wouldn't stand for it today if we realized what is actually taking place, that there is a system of enslavement that's taking place. It's just a little more sly than it was before. Yes. Instead of chains and whips, it's different carrots and sticks that they place in front of us. And we are not free in our world, and that is something white people really yearn to be. They once they realize that they're enslaved and that others around them are enslaved, they'll do everything they can to get out of it. And that is not something that actually blacks were ever going to do on their own in the United States, it seemed, and also in Africa. They need to have the communist agitators in there.
And then you see, one of the things that I say, and it's a personal opinion, but I really believe that they do not see cause and effect. So they do not see that what I do today is going to have an effect tomorrow and probably longer than tomorrow. They just don't seem to have an understanding of that. Because if they understood that, Kyle, why would they not look at Zimbabwe? See those people starving. See that there are no farms thriving there. See that there is no commerce. There's nothing happening in that country. And see that they're doing exactly the same thing in South Africa and turn around and change it. They don't see it for some reason.
Mm-hmm. It's high time preference is what they exhibit. Is basically somebody who's just living in the present, wants everything now. I don't care about later. I got a chocolate cake in front of me.
Yes,
I'll eat it all right now, even though I'm having an awful stomach ache right after, and I might get fat from it. Right. And this is something that is definitely a big problem because they're able to be incentivized with short-term gain.
Yes.
Oh, we'll give you this now if you go along with our agenda. Yes. And they don't, as you said, they don't think about what will happen in the long term. And that's what is taking place in all these different instances with them slaughtering the goose that laid the golden egg for them, which is the white race. What they're saying is, I'm going to give up that, small golden egg so I can eat the whole goose now.
Yes. The ANC gives them a T-shirt, a baseball cap, and a plate of Kentucky chicken to get them to come and vote ANC. And that they'll vote it because, wow, they fed us today and they're good people. They don't see the big picture of how terrible it is. We're coming up to the end of the show, Carl, if you have any closing thoughts.
Karin, it was great speaking with you here tonight. I really do appreciate all the work you put in. I'm very excited to see this documentary come to fruition.
Yes.
And anytime that I can help you out, do let me know. I wanted to encourage the audience out there not to lose hope, to realize that if we do work together, we can achieve incredible things in a short period of time. Also, I do have renegadebroadcasting.com where I broadcast every Sunday night. I'm actually hosting the roundtable right after this show ends. And also there's renegadetribune.com and hellstormdocumentary.com. Again, Karin, thank you very much. It was great talking to you.
Thank you very, very much, Carl. You give a different perspective, and I really think that it's time for our audience to hear an American perspective and understand that it's not only South Africans that are concerned about what is happening. Americans see it too. Thank you very much, everybody, for listening. Good night. Same time, same place.
Listening to Revolution Radio.